Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night wondering whether a nursing home is truly the right choice for your golden years or for your aging loved ones? As someone who has lived 73 years on this earth, most of them right here in the United States, I can tell you this question once kept me tossing and turning for weeks. Maybe you're worried about losing control of your own life, or perhaps you dread becoming invisible to the people who matter most. Whatever your fear, you're not alone. Everyone hopes to avoid those pangs of regret that can haunt us when we realize we might have made a decision that changed everything. Before we dive in, let me assure you, I'm not here to bash every nursing home in America. They can be a godsend for some folks. But there are regrets I've personally seen and even experienced during a brief stay in a nursing facility after a hip surgery. Those regrets linger, quietly reminding me how easily we can lose our sense of self. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and keep watching. We're about to explore 6 big nursing home regrets you really need to know before it's too late. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let's dive right in. Regret 1: giving up too much independence. I vividly recall the first morning I woke up in that small, standardized room at the nursing home. No pictures on the wall, no cozy blankets from home, just the dull hum of an overhead fluorescent light. It felt like my sense of independence had been stripped away. At 73, I've managed to do things my own way for decades, whether it was driving cross-country with my spouse, cooking my favorite Sunday breakfast, or simply deciding when to go to sleep. Then suddenly I was on someone else's schedule. Breakfast is served at 7 a.m. sharp, the nurse reminded me. Lights out by 9 p.m. so everyone can rest. It sounds trivial, but those little changes chip away at your autonomy. Losing independence is like losing a piece of your identity. It might start small, maybe you let someone else handle your laundry or pick out your clothes because it's easier, but over time, it can grow. Your daily routine becomes something you inherit from the facility's timetable instead of something you create. The problem here is that the more independence you give up, the harder it becomes to reclaim. You start to believe you can't make decisions on your own anymore, leading to a sense of helplessness and frustration. It doesn't stop there. Once you start feeling less independent, you might also begin to feel less confident about voicing your opinions. You might think, "Oh, I'm just an old-timer, let the staff handle it." But the consequences are serious. You risk losing the spark that makes you uniquely you. When you watch yourself in the mirror and see someone who has stopped fighting for personal choice, regret can creep in. That pang in your heart, it's the recognition that you've allowed your freedom to slip through your fingers. If you find yourself relating to this, let me know in the comments by typing the number 2. I'm curious how many of us have feared losing independence, and if you're worried about it, you're not alone. My advice, as someone who's been there, is to set firm boundaries and make your preferences crystal clear to family and facility staff alike. Ask yourself, am I really ready to give up deciding what time I turn in at night? Or do I want help with simple tasks I can still do on my own? If you hesitate, it might be a sign you're not quite ready for that next step. So keep that independence as long as you can. You'll thank yourself later. Feeling the loss of independence can be tough, but it's only the tip of the iceberg. Nursing homes come with a host of emotional challenges, and one of the biggest regrets people talk about is feeling like they've become invisible, especially to the people they love most. If that sparks a chord in your heart, wait until you hear what happens when family visits dwindle or stop altogether. Let's take a look at regret 2. One I've personally experienced, and it stings more than you might imagine. Regret 2: feeling forgotten by family and friends. One of the hardest memories I have from my nursing home stay is looking out the window every Sunday morning, hoping to see my daughter's car pull into the parking lot. Sometimes she'd show up, bearing flowers and a bright smile. Other times, she'd have to cancel because life got in the way. It's nobody's fault, really. People have jobs, kids' soccer games, errands. Yet, when you're sitting in that small room counting the hours, it's easy to feel left behind. Loneliness in a nursing home can become overwhelming. The problem starts when people assume you're well taken care of since you have medical professionals around. The extended family stops checking in as often. Friends might assume you're making new buddies at bingo night, but behind the facility doors, your emotional life can become stagnant. The days feel long, the nights even longer, and soon you realize you miss not just the big family gatherings, but the small, everyday interactions, like chatting about the weather with your neighbor or sharing a quick cup of coffee with a friend. The consequence of feeling forgotten is that you start to question your own worth. You might ask yourself, if nobody's visiting, does anybody care? You feel a growing sense of disappointment, perhaps even fear, because you don't want to become a burden. Worst of all, you start to resent the very people you love. No one wants to admit it, but loneliness can turn into bitterness over time. And that's where regrets can really pile up. Regret that you didn't keep in closer contact with your community, or that you didn't express your needs loudly enough. My biggest warning here: speak up. When you notice the visits slowing, let your loved ones know how it makes you feel. Perhaps they need a gentle reminder that your emotional needs are just as important as your physical ones. Don't just hope they'll magically figure it out, tell them. And if you've ever worried about being forgotten in a nursing home, type 4 in the comments to let me know I'm not alone in this. Lastly, keep an active social circle. Whether it's neighbors, old work buddies, or church friends, encourage them to stay connected. Don't underestimate how vital that circle can be in keeping your spirits up when family members can't always be there. Remember, your life experiences and your presence still matter, even if you're not living under the same roof as the rest of the family. Feeling forgotten can trigger loneliness, resentment, and more. Yet there's another looming concern that might bring a whole new set of regrets if it's not handled properly: finances. Yes, money matters in a nursing home setting, can create stress that amplifies every other regret. If you think loneliness is bad, imagine combining it with the pressure of crippling expenses. This next regret carries a heavy price tag. Literally, let's explore the hidden financial burdens and why they can be so heartbreaking. Reclench 3. Underestimating the financial burden. Let's talk dollars and cents. I spent just 6 weeks in a nursing home for post-surgical rehab, and even that short stay gave me a sobering look at the cost. Insurance might cover some parts of your care, but it never covers everything. There are co-pays, private room fees, specialized therapies, and let's not forget the cost of medication. A friend of mine joked, "It's like you need a second mortgage just to get older in this country." Sometimes it feels like he's not far off. The problem here is that many folks jump into a nursing home arrangement without fully understanding the financial commitment. Sure, you might have Medicare, Medicaid, or private insurance, but each plan has limits and unexpected gaps. I've seen people who were confident they had saved enough, only to watch their nest egg shrink faster than they ever imagined. The stress of mounting bills can weigh heavily, turning what was supposed to be a secure environment into a financial nightmare. And when stress levels rise, so do health issues. It's a vicious cycle that can erode your peace of mind and sense of security. The consequences go beyond just your wallet. The emotional fallout can be tremendous. You might feel guilty that your children are dipping into their own savings to help cover your costs, or that your spouse is skipping out on their personal needs just to pay the bills. There's also a sense of disappointment that you can't enjoy the retirement you once envisioned, traveling, hobbies, or simply living comfortably at home. Financial regret can merge with every other regret, creating a tapestry of anxiety that's tough to untangle. My advice, speaking as someone with 7 decades of lessons tucked under my belt, is to plan meticulously. Consult a financial advisor who specializes in elder care. Ask questions, compare facilities, and understand every cost before you sign. If you've already faced financial struggles or worry you might, leave a comment with the number 6 so I know we're in this together. And never forget, you have options. Sometimes, community resources or in-home support programs can fill the gap without draining your bank account. You worked hard for your savings, so don't let hidden nursing home costs be the reason your dreams unravel. Act early, plan wisely, and keep an open line of communication with your family. Money may not buy happiness, but it can prevent some major heartaches when managed well. Finances might complicate your world, But there's another aspect that can feel just as taxing: losing control over the daily rhythms of your life. Even if you're managing the bills, what about your personal freedom? Let's address a regret that too many older Americans discover only after it's too late: the sense of confinement that can settle in when someone else calls the shots on how you spend your time. Get ready for regret for losing personal freedom and choice. I still remember the day I decided I wanted to visit an old friend in another part of town. I was healing up, feeling decent, and just craved a breath of fresh air. But the nursing home rules weren't flexible. I had to sign out, arrange for an approved transport, and meet certain medical clearance guidelines. By the time I jumped through all the hoops, it felt like more stress than it was worth. What used to be a simple decision, I want to go see my friend, became a bureaucratic maze. The problem is, in many nursing homes, routines are tightly structured for safety and efficiency. Meals happen at set times, medication schedules are locked in, and recreational activities follow a posted calendar. That might sound organized, but the flip side is that personal spontaneity often disappears. You can't just decide on a whim to stroll through a nearby park or whip up your favorite dessert in the kitchen. For people who've spent decades making their own choices, this sudden lack of autonomy can feel like a prison sentence. One that breeds regret every time you see a life outside those walls continuing without you. The consequence is a feeling of emotional claustrophobia. When you lose personal freedom, you start to see yourself as merely a patient, not an individual with your own passions and tastes. This shift can stifle your creativity, dampen your enjoyment of life, and feed a slow-burning resentment. In fact, you might even stop asking for what you really want because you assume the system won't allow it anyway. That kind of resignation can lead to deeper regrets down the line. So here's my warning. Don't overlook how vital it is to preserve your freedom, even if it's in small, meaningful ways. Maybe it's advocating for your right to choose your dinner time, or negotiating the occasional independent outing. If you don't fight for your freedom, you might wake up one day realizing you haven't truly lived for years. If any of this resonates, type 2 in the comments again. Let me see how many of us value personal freedom as much as I do. And remember, with the right communication and planning, some nursing homes are more flexible than others. Don't be afraid to ask, push, and insist on living life on your own terms, even if it's within a structured environment. Your voice matters, and your choices define who you are. Freedom is priceless, but there's another hidden pitfall that can strike at the heart of your emotional well-being. It's not just about schedules and sign-out sheets, it's about feeling heard, understood, and genuinely cared for. If losing independence feels like a physical restraint, emotional neglect is an invisible chain that's just as heavy. Get ready for regret 5, one that can make even the most resilient among us feel utterly alone. Regret 5, feeling emotionally neglected or invisible. Many folks assume that a nursing home staff will meet not only their medical needs but their emotional ones as well. Unfortunately, being cared for physically doesn't always mean you're being cared for emotionally. I've met individuals who've shared heartbreaking stories, staff members who only check in to hand over pills, or who seem too rushed to sit down for a simple heart-to-heart chat. An older gentleman once told me, "They keep me alive, but they don't make me feel alive." The problem arises in busy facilities that are under pressure to handle a high volume of residents. Emotional support often becomes a luxury. There may be well-intentioned nurses and aides, but they're stretched thin across many patients. They might love to chat with you about your grandkids or your favorite baseball team, but they barely have time to breathe between responsibilities. Over weeks and months, that lack of genuine interaction can morph into a sense of invisibility. You might feel your story doesn't matter, and that's a painful realization after so many decades of living and loving. The consequence of emotional neglect is a slow burn of sadness that can spiral into depression. When nobody asks how you're feeling beyond "how's your pain level today," you begin to doubt whether anyone truly cares about the person behind the chart. Worse still, it can impact your physical health. Studies have long suggested that mental state and emotional well-being play a huge role in overall health outcomes, especially in older adults. That's why regret hits hard. You think, I should have stayed with family, or I should have asked for an in-home care option, or I shouldn't have assumed the staff would offer emotional support. My caution to you is to speak up early. If you sense that no one's addressing your emotional needs, say something. Ask to see a counselor, talk to a social worker, or engage in group activities. Often, these are available but underutilized because people don't realize they have to request them. If you've ever felt invisible in a healthcare setting, let me know by typing 4 in the comments. Finally, remember that your life experiences, your fears, and your joys all deserve to be acknowledged. Don't accept being treated like a number on a list. Your heart still beats with stories to tell. So find someone, anyone, who will truly listen. Emotional neglect can leave lasting scars, but there's one final regret that resonates deeply with many older Americans. The realization that each day feels unfulfilling, like you're simply passing time. When you don't have meaningful activities that nourish your spirit, regret can build into a crushing weight. Let's dive into regret 6, and by now I hope you're seeing a pattern that can help you or a loved one make wiser choices. Regret 6. Missing out on fulfilling activities and purpose. Let me share a personal story. Before I had my hip replacement, I was active in my local community garden. I grew tomatoes, peppers, and even a small patch of wildflowers. Tending those plants gave me purpose, a reason to wake up early, put on my gloves, and smile at the progress of each tiny seedling. After I moved into the nursing home for rehab, I remember looking around for anything similar, any hobby or pastime that could give me the same sense of satisfaction. But the closest thing I found was the occasional arts and crafts session that felt more like a hurried activity on the schedule than a true passion project. The problem is that many nursing homes, although they may offer recreational programs, don't always tailor them to individual interests. A one-size-fits-all approach to activities might not nurture your particular joys. If you love music but the only thing offered is group bingo, you might feel disconnected. Days can blur together, leaving you wondering where your sense of purpose has gone. The consequence is a deep-seated regret that you're squandering what might be the last chapter of your life. No one wants to look back and think, I wasted those years in a place where I never felt truly alive. You might feel as though you're losing parts of yourself, your creativity, your curiosity, or your spirit of adventure. Over time, this can bring on a sense of defeat where you stop trying to find enjoyment because you assume it's out of reach. Here's my strong suggestion. If you find yourself or a loved one in a nursing home, ask about activities that align with personal passions. Can you have a small windowsill garden? Could you continue writing poetry if that's your thing? Maybe there's a volunteer program to read books to younger kids in the community or help out in a local food bank. If the facility doesn't offer it, don't be shy about requesting it or organizing it yourself. If you relate to that longing for purposeful activities, comment 6 below. Let's remind each other that life doesn't end just because you've moved to a place that's supposed to provide care. To live is the rarest thing in the world, wrote Oscar Wilde. Most people just exist. Make sure you're truly living. We've touched on 6 major regrets people often face in a nursing home: giving up independence, feeling forgotten, drowning in financial burdens, losing personal freedom, suffering emotional neglect, and missing out on meaningful activities. Each one of these can strip away bits of our dignity and spirit if we're not careful. Yet, let me be crystal clear. Not every nursing home is the same. Some are far more compassionate, better staffed, and more flexible than others. You might find a place that feels just right for you or your loved one, where the staff is attentive, the activities are enriching, and you still feel a sense of control over your life. At 73, I've learned that life is all about choices and balance. A nursing home doesn't have to be a place of despair. It can be a supportive environment if you ask the right questions, set boundaries, and maintain strong connections with the outside world. Never be afraid to speak up for what you need, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. If you've found value in this video, please like it, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who might be on the fence about nursing home decisions. Let's help each other make informed choices. As a final piece of wisdom, I want to leave you with a simple but powerful thought. In the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take. Sometimes staying home longer with supportive services is the chance you don't want to miss. Other times, choosing the right nursing home with a robust plan can actually improve your quality of life. Whatever you decide, remember, your story matters. Don't let circumstances rob you of the opportunity to live it as fully as possible. Stay informed, stay hopeful, and above all, remember that you do have a choice.